All right, welcome to College Talk Tuesday. Here with you this Tuesday, Pearl and Andy Lockwood. Hello, Pearl.
Hello, Andy. Hello, listeners.
Today we're talking about something that is fresh and hot off the presses, at least in our neck of the woods, in our business. We've had, just today was the third instance of hearing about buyer's remorse, college buyer's remorse, I guess more specifically freshman buyer's remorse. So what am I talking about?
I'm unhappy and I want to come home. Transferring.
Okay, and the interesting thing is today's date is the 29th
of summer still.
Of August, 29th of summer or August. And kids have declared this to their parents maybe a week or a week and a half or sometimes less after they arrived on campus. So, we heard the first one. That was from, we're not going to disclose any clients' names, but it was from a large school in the South that many of you have heard of. And what the person said was, in the middle of orientation, because you got the email, I'm just not happy.
I actually spoke with her. She's unhappy. She feels like a fish out of water. She's homesick. It just isn't similar, not that different from when people make choices about colleges, sometimes arbitrarily, like it just felt right, it just felt so me. Similarly, there is the feeling of it's just not me, I just don't find my niche here, I don't see it, but this...
After 5 days.
After 5 days, after 2 weeks, we've had a handful of people who have said that, and
today was the third. Yeah. So we had one person who's a client. Actually, two are clients, and one is just someone who our son plays football with, right? And I think in each case, we kind of look at each other. We're like, "What would you tell our kids?" And I would say something that's probably not fit for publication on Facebook, but I guess what we should talk about is how to avoid this type of buyer's remorse. And I don't know the particulars about one out of the three, but the other two kids who are our clients, I know that they did not go looking at colleges and picking their colleges frivolously. There was all sorts of college trips and visiting college fairs and talking to the admissions reps, talking to other parents and all that type of stuff. And I guess the best explanation that we can come up with, and I'm trying to speak for us, but Pearl will give her own personal insight into this, is that in many cases the students' idealized or romanticized version of what this particular college is like does not match up with reality. And so I thought what we could talk about today is like how that can actually happen, because I don't think in any of these three cases we had a situation where the kid had never been away from home.
Right.
It wasn't like a homesickness thing, as far as I could tell.
It is. But it's a different variety of it. I think I've said this even before these particular instances. One of the most underreported facets of this college process is kids go through and listen, and they hear it from everyone. College is the best time of your life. College is the greatest. It's going to be the best time of your life. And then
it's not.
You have that idea. You finally picked your school, and now you attend there, and you don't have that feeling of this is the greatest time of my life. What about that message I was given, and it doesn't match my insides and how I'm feeling? I'm feeling homesick. I'm feeling like it's uneasy, it's uncomfortable, you don't know, you don't have your friends yet, you're just meeting people, you're putting your game face on, everybody is, and
so it may not be college specific, is sort of what you're saying.
Well, no, I think it is not college specific.
Right.
I think it's an underreported phenomenon that does in fact occur, and if there was maybe some awareness that is an experience you might have in the first several weeks, months of school, even if you've gone away in summers before, and even if you've been separate from your parents, this is unique. You are quasi-permanently living away from home, really, for the first time.
Okay, so I can't really relate to this personally. Pearl can. I went to college. I was 2 hours away. I could come home every once in a while. I didn't. But I think people our age, parents our age, I think we can't really relate as much to the kids necessarily. But Pearl has her own story, which I want to ask you about to talk about. In the meantime, say you're going to be checking out chat. We're on a little bit of a delay in terms of when we're recording this and then the response. But please, if you're watching us, introduce yourselves by posting below. Please like, please comment, please share this. Help us get this information out. And again, the purpose of today's chat is not just a vent about silly kids, but to try to arm you and your kids with the tools, I guess, that are going to help you avoid this type of buyer's remorse. Because we hear about this every year, and I think we always forget about it.
Right.
And it's usually something like, my daughter's number one choice is Tulane. She's got to go there. She fell in love with it. She just loved the way the buildings were laid out. She loved the feel she got on campus. She loved whatever it is. You can just fill in the blank. By the way, it's never anything about the classes,
many
the
times they haven't
professors,
started yet.
the career center. Well, this is when I'm backtracking to when they visit,
Right.
and then they go to the school. And in that case, the Tulane example, she left after about 6 months after being obsessed with it for a year and a half prior to that. And we just talked to you about these three examples, sort of summarily. But when you went to college, Pearl graduated from Cornell, but she didn't start there. She started at Skidmore. So explain that whole process, and then I want to ask you some specific questions about how you chose it.
Okay, sure. Well, as Andy correctly stated, I started college at Skidmore College, and
which is a small liberal arts. Did it used to be all girls?
It used to be all girls, and now it is 2/3 women to 1/3 men. It may have been the first problem.
So small liberal. Well, but you still chose it. But
I still chose it.
You went to a small public high school
Yes.
in Roslyn. You somehow you chose Skidmore, and it's a very tiny school in upstate New York near Saratoga Springs, I guess.
Correct.
And how quickly did it take you to realize that it wasn't a good fit?
5 seconds.
And but what was different about that than your trip up there months before?
Months before, I had gone up with a friend and visited, and I had a fun weekend in the town. In the town of Saratoga.
I can totally take that guy.
You can take him. Yep.
Okay, that's important. Yeah. Sorry, let's talk about college.
And when I got there, besides the natural, of course, there's the element of homesickness. But when I got there and I said, wow, there's no football team, there's no rah-rah, there's no Greek life. I knew these things before, and it felt, and there were very few kids on campus, generally speaking. Skidmore has about
2,000 maybe?
Maybe, but probably about 2 to 4,000. But it felt to me like a boarding school or a private school that I was attending, in contrast to my public school. But it did feel like 13th grade at a private school for me.
So I'm sorry, was this attractive to you when you were visiting? Or how was that different?
When I was visiting, I literally went to a party on campus, which was fun. I had a good time.
Parties
it certainly seemed nice enough. I knew very little about the right questions to ask then. I had nobody advising me. Actually, interestingly, my guidance counselor was fired a year after I graduated.
Because of the Skidmore incident?
Not the Skidmore incident. There were a couple of scandals my year with transcript changing. But anyhow, we'll leave that aside.
Yeah, let's not digress. So I can take your ex-boyfriend.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Wait. Go ahead.
I had picked a school in a very immature way. I had gone up. The weather was nice. The people seemed fine. The food was good. This restaurant. It was very superficial, kind of silly stuff. And I had not really gone to visit schools with important critical questions like looking around and saying, do I see myself here? Are these kids, I can relate to?
I never asked you, what other schools did you visit?
I visited.
And why did you not pick them?
Eventually, I felt, and at the time I had a boyfriend, I didn't want to be so far away. I originally wanted to go to Emory. And when it came time to actually going and choosing, I couldn't the idea of being so far and every time I needed to come home getting on an airplane bothered me. So then I saw kind of what was left, and I had a friend from high school who was also going to Skidmore as well, so it all seemed fine. It was not picked with great care. But nonetheless, so I got there, and the environment for me seemed very homogeneous, and yet I was not necessarily a member of that class that was there, that the group of people. I felt like a fish out of water, which is not dissimilar from what some of these current freshmen are saying about how they feel at these schools. However, my parents did not invite me or give me the option to race home. And
did it even dawn on you?
It did not dawn on me. I was miserable, and I cried every day in the beginning. However, I knew that there is an adjustment period no matter what. And
So what'd you do? You sucked it up?
I sucked it up,
and how were your grades?
My feeling was, okay, it may just be an adjustment thing and eventually I'll like it here, or if I will continue to feel this miserable here, and I now need to put a plan in motion right now to transfer, because as you're there in the fall of that freshman year, while you're just adjusting and deciding if the school's right for you, that's when you would actually have to apply for transfer, whether it be in a January admission situation or the following fall, which is what I chose. So once that was my decision, I did everything I could to work my hardest and elevate make sure I had a really good, strong academic record, so that when I was transferring, I had a lot of options. And
I think the other thing that you need to understand, and I don't think we talked about this, is that when you are applying for transfer to the second school, they don't really want to take you if you're going to do the same thing there that you did at school number one. That you need to demonstrate that you can do well in school, and you're not just some flake, and they're going to invest all this, space and money and give your spot to someone instead of giving it to someone else, that type of thing. So that's important to do also, and I'm not so sure that the people that we know who are already transferring and pulling out as opposed to sticking it out like you did, I'm not so sure they realize that. I think that's important. But what you did is you got the best grades of your life.
I did.
I think ironically you said that you learned a lot more at Skidmore than you did at Cornell, the Ivy School.
That's
Ivy
true.
School.
I mean, I'll touch on that comment.
Yeah. So,
although I was,
worked out well for you.
It did. I mean, I worked really, really hard. I had a pretty flawless academic record at Skidmore, and I immersed myself in its academia because I knew this was my plan, and the byproduct of that was I was really engaged from an intellectual standpoint and academically by the actual professors. Now, these are the pros and cons also, just generally speaking about schools. The professors themselves were teaching the classes. They were smaller at Skidmore. They were smaller. It was really learning for learning's sake, and it was really interesting. So that part of what you get at college had been met at Skidmore. Just the rest of everything else there did not feel right for me. By contrast, I transferred, as you know, to Cornell University in my sophomore year, and I'm going to backtrack in a minute about just transferring in general and some of the information you would need to get a hold of if that's something you're going to consider. But at Cornell, and it's terrific, and it certainly affords me initial credibility with someone when I tell them that I went there. Yes. But the actual interest and connection that I made with the professors was much different than at Skidmore. The classes were often not taught by professors, but rather teaching assistants. The classes had hundreds of people in them instead of a smaller, more high school-like setting where you felt that you were heard and had access.
What was your smallest class?
At Cornell?
No, at both. Yeah.
Huge.
What was your smallest class at Skidmore?
Could be, under 20 people in a class. Yeah, it depends.
My smallest class was 6.
Wow.
What
was that subject?
It was a high-end political science, upper-end political science class with my faculty advisor, and I went to Wesleyan, and I remember thinking many times about blowing off the class, and I was like, I know Murphy's going to be there. He's going to see me at the bar. He's going to see me at the bar later tonight. Because that was the type of relationship you have at smaller schools, and so it got me, dragged me out of bed and to go. I'm not proud of it, but that is another difference. Whereas if you're lost in a big school, you don't have, and you're the type of kid who needs that type of pressure that I did. It may turn out to be not everything was cracked up to be just because it's an Ivy League school. But anyway, let's get back to the.
That's true.
Let's get back to how can you prevent the transferring? Like, what advice would you give to parents and kids to do whatever they can to get to know and think about the schools before they commit to them? Like, how do they avoid the types of mistakes that you made and our clients seem to be making?
Well, I think you need to have a very purposeful agenda and mindfulness when you are visiting these schools and gathering information about them. I think people are so consumed with the, can I get in? Can I get in? Can I get in? Can I get in?
Yeah.
Are they going to accept me? Are they going to accept me? And they don't think past that. Well, what happens when I will get accepted to these schools? How do I choose?
Right.
It's hard to put yourself in that position.
Well, that's the
I've
important
been
point.
accepted.
You're choosing them too. It's not.
Right.
It's not that they're choosing you. It's not a one-way street. It's both.
And it's a time to really look inside and say, what am I like? What am I really like? And
right. Am I going to be okay in a remote, rural, setting where there's small classes and not a lot to do on the weekend other than go to the horse races, which
Exactly.
I've never known you to be a big
Never.
fan. Or do I need more action? And you were definitely more of an action you used to be before we got married, and I think that's important. But I think also one of the most important things that Pearl said earlier is that you can't have this focus on I gotta get in at all costs and forgetting about everything else and you're told that college is going to be the best time of your life.
right.
Which, by the way, that's kind of sad. I mean, I think about that a lot. I did enjoy college a lot, but if that were the best thing that ever happened to me, that'd be pretty sad just to be looking in the rearview mirror all the time. So,
True.
so I don't know how you communicate that to a kid other than you're going to have a great time in college. You're also going to learn a lot. Hopefully, you're going to get something out of it far more important than what we're putting into it. But there's an adjustment period. You have to understand
really
that
is.
it's different, and you can simulate it, but I think you have to set their expectations and coach them through it the right way.
Exactly.
And it sounds like you weren't coached at
I
all.
was not.
It sounds like our clients may have gotten it on some level.
On some level.
But,
I think it's really something that's not discussed widely, and a lot of kids feel this way. And it's such a disconnect from the message they've been given. This is the greatest, it's the greatest, it's the greatest. And then they get there, and they don't feel that way, and it doesn't match how they feel inside. And then, nobody forewarned them that they'd feel this way, so therefore this must be wrong because I'm feeling bad, I want to come home. Instead of, this is an adjustment period, let me stick it out. Because what happens is, months down the road, you would often say, oh, you look across the quad, there's that friend, that was my best friend during orientation.
Right.
And ha 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 ha, wow, I haven't seen him, her since then.
Right.
Because that's what happens.
Things
This
change.
beginning part of college it's not what it's going to be. It's just this awkward, nobody knows everybody, we're just figuring everything out, figuring your place. In many, I'd say almost in all of these cases, the school classes have not even started yet.
Well, as we're recording this, yeah, absolutely.
So I think if a student goes to school with the mindset of there is an adjustment period and there is a difference between the adjustment period and feeling homesick and getting used to your new living arrangement and your new environment versus I didn't pick the right school to match my personality, my skill set, my whatever. And there is a big, big difference, and you kind of need to be there long enough, even if you're unhappy, to get through that first part, which is something that you may feel at any school, and make sure on the other end, which was not a purposeful plan on my part, but that is what eventually happened. I was really desperately miserable, like I think all these people who are saying they want to transfer feel.
Well,
and
let me jump in. So,
Sure.
so the other thing is that a lot of times people are not happy because they don't like their roommate, or or things like that, and that's not necessarily a reflection on the school, and it's not necessarily a problem that can't be fixed. I think just plain and blunt, I think bluntly, I think that a lot of kids are so entitled, and I'm not saying this about the people that we mentioned before, although no, never mind.
Okay,
but
continue.
okay, thanks. So, but did I digress again?
Yeah.
So I can take your ex-boyfriend, and I'm not going to bash our clients. Okay, but but it's a good thing for kids to learn how to get along with people, right? And if you never afford them that opportunity, if you're the helicopter parent and you're always swooping in and fixing things for them, to me, this thing that we're talking about with not liking your college and wanting to come home is probably, as an amateur psychologist, as Pearl's understudy, who's almost a psychologist, I'm an amateur almost psychologist, I think that is just symptomatic of the overall entitlement and helicoptering type of parenting that's going on. And I think that's the real thing that you need to let go, because you're actually doing them a disservice by not letting them figure things out on their own. Because when they get out in the workforce and they don't like their boss, or they don't like their coworker, what are they going to do? Quit? Kids do that. Kids leave jobs because they don't get along with someone, but they're not going to have a good career unless they learn how to do that very valuable skill. So that's sort of the way I look at it. But in terms of, so I think just to sum up here, in terms of preventing this, it's impossible to prevent. But I think you need to set expectations properly and to explain to them that, as best as you can, sometimes it's okay coming from a parent, sometimes kids won't listen to their parents.
Right.
But going in with, the just understanding that this is a very normal thing, there's nothing wrong with these kids, they don't need special tests or anything. But in some cases, they may need just to be told, okay, you're going to suck it up, you're going to do what Pearl did, kick ass in school and get great grades, and then you can see, where the dust is going to settle after you apply for a transfer. I think the other thing, though, is that most kids won't transfer. Most kids will get used to it. They give it a shot.
And by the time they find out, they will have adjusted.
They more often than not, when I talk to kids who are not happy with schools, they ultimately become happy. And it's just like, it's called marrying the natives. That's the phrase I always think. You get used to who you're hanging out with, and you make a life for yourself. Right. So I talked to a dad actually yesterday who was asking me, well, my kid's grades aren't good enough to get into these types of schools, but what if he goes to this school first and then transfers? And I said, I think what's likely to happen is he's going to be happy at whatever school he does end up at first, and it's unlikely he's going to transfer, but that's your worst case scenario. So so take the pressure off. Don't feel that this is the best time in your life and you have to like it and all that. But at the same token, give it a fair chance.
Give it a fair chance is right, because it's some of the best lessons in life are when you have unhappy situations. Like if you're going to be the parent that in every year of school you're going to go in and meet and special up with the guidance counselor so you can handpick the kids' teachers and the kids that are going to be in the class, so there's no adversity.
Rant coming on.
So that there's no adversity. And then how does this kid grow? Mommy and Daddy will not be around to hold their hands their entire life.
Except yours, Harry.
Living through times of adversity really show and demonstrate growth when you come out on the other side. And then you also teach yourself, I got through this.
You know, when you get a job and you can't get along well with people, how long are you going to last in that job? I mean, honestly.
Right.
That's the way I look at it.
At the minute, you get into a situation, you see, okay, well, I'm not crazy about this teacher, I'm not crazy about that. The next thing shouldn't be, I'm out, I'm bailing.
Right.
It should be,
Mommy,
okay, it's not ideal, but this is a growth experience for me. I'm going to figure out how to manage this situation, which is my reality, and weather myself through it, get through it. And you will become a stronger, more independent person as a result of that, because your job as a parent is to teach your child how to live independently of you.
All right.
Okay.
So that was.
I did want to touch on I do want to give two important tips about transferring in general.
Let me see a brief commercial.
Brief commercial.
So number one, please like, comment, and share to spread this around, because if you feel this is important, we feel this is important, but if you feel like this is valuable, important information, please help us get the word out, number one. Number two, we have a whole slew of upcoming presentations in September coming up, and Harry, can you post this in that post? Go to collegeplanningGuru.com. Can you post that there? You do now or later? We'll do it afterward. But if you go to our website, collegeplanningGuru.com, and click on, I think it's events or something like that, at the top, then you'll see the calendar A lot of stuff coming up, both live, and we're going to be doing more webinar-based stuff now that the summer is ending. We're helping kids finish off their college essays. We have two great former admissions officers from one of the most elite colleges in the country who is working with our kids, and our client Julie actually was just giving rave reviews about one of them, Sarah, who's doing a fantastic job. And so if you had any questions about picking colleges, both if you have a rising senior, but also hopefully if you have someone who's a rising junior or younger, you can just reach out to us also on that website, College Planning Guru. Okay, go ahead. Last 2 points.
Last 2 points on transferring. Just to take you through the rest of my year that I decided to transfer. It's a little bit of a different ballgame with transfers because if this is something you want to consider, and again, you would plan accordingly, not because you're absolutely going to transfer, but you want to have your choices available to you in the event that you don't adjust at this particular school, so that come the spring, you have choices. To that, I wanted to say part of my research then entailed seeing how many schools out there are transfer friendly. When I was applying, University of Pennsylvania took maybe 1 to 2 transfer students each year. As compared to Cornell, they had a full transfer class where they had an orientation for transfers. It's very similar to a freshman transfer situation. I met one of my best friends from college, still friend Cindy, who was also a transfer. She had transferred from GW after her freshman year.
Together.
We are cute together. And so, yes, academically I had to be where I had to be in order to get into a Cornell. However, the nice thing was when I got there, there was a full-blown orientation because there were a lot of transfers. So the schools you look at, you need to pay attention to, well, do they accept transfers? How transfer-friendly are they? That was my only tip I wanted to add for those of you.
Last thing I'll say about that is there is money for transfer students. A lot of times there are small transfer scholarships. The need-based financial aid, I think, is usually given out on a fair basis. I think a lot of times that's because either the schools reserve a chunk of money or they have attrition. They have people who transfer or don't come back, to them also. So that is treated just the same way as when you're applying out of college, in terms of the deadlines and filling out the forms and all that. So that's how it works financial aid wise. All right. So anything else?
No. If you have any questions, of course, you know how to contact us.
You want lunch? Okay. So we'll talk about that off camera. So this is Pearl and Andy Lockwood on behalf of Pearl. I'm Andy. Signing off. Thank you for watching College Talk Tuesday. Please like, comment, and share, and we'll be back next Tuesday after Labor Day. First day of school for us. All schools started for several other districts. And so we'll be back next Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you ask us a question in the comments and we didn't get to it, we're going to read them later and try to respond to everything that we can. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next week.